final exam, midterm, and assignment. But for law, you don't have assignment at all. It's only your final exam and one class test. That used to be always every semester, you see, every semester from beginning itself. Yeah, you'll have one final exam which carries 50 marks, and you'll have one class test or midterm exam which carries another 50 marks, total 100. You never had the assignment for your introduction to law. Whereas the other subjects you have. But now, yeah, with the COVID thing and all the things, with the MCO and all the things, yeah, still hours in your college on Monday, and still they have not made a decision yet. But according to FAWAS, the decision will only be made on the 6th of December. Whether are you all going to have an exam, an assignment, sorry, your assignment to assignments and alternative exam, or your midterm and your final exam together. They have not decided, you know, they will only decide they will only decide on coming the 6th. That means when is 6, yeah? 6 falls on the 6 is Sunday, yeah. So that means, yeah, on Monday only you all will know, only on Monday the actual situation. Only on Monday you all will know whether are you all going to have assignments and your midterm exam, or midterm exam plus alternative exam. So they're going to decide only on coming Monday. So because Sunday is 6, because you know why? You know why they're waiting for? I think they're waiting for the MCO extension, whether they're going to extend or not. If MCO is not going to be extended, if not going to be extended, then I think they wanted you all to come and sit the exam physically there. But if the MCO is extended, then what you will have to do is you have two assignments, two individual assignments, each 3,500 words, which will be given on week 14. The question will be given on the week 14, and the submission will be, I think, 2 or 3 weeks after that due date, after the 14th. That means week 17 or something like that, you know. So the college will only decide it on coming Monday. Because I was there last Monday, they have not decided yet. So only, yeah, you see, yeah, the thing is that only once they decide, then I will tell you all, because as what you all know, we have said final exam question, alternative exam also. So if the MCA is extended, then we are not going to use the final exam, but we're going to use the alternative exam, which is slightly different from the final. So uh, even Fawaz is not aware, only on coming Monday, all of you all will know. But so only then we can decide on that. Yeah. But what we'll do is that that's one of the reason why the environment I've not covered yet. Yeah. But anyway, never mind. Today, what we are okay. Any questions? Do you have any questions to do? Any questions, please? Hello, hello.
No question, but we're feeling exhaust on no question at the moment.
No question. Yeah. No
Yeah,
question. Yeah. Okay. Good.
feeling exhaust
Is
on.
it
Yeah.
clear? Okay. Is it clear? Can you hear me clear?
So far. So
Good.
teacher,
Okay.
if we have assignment, the assignment brief will be sent at December 6th, right? We not postpone again, right? The
No,
assignment brief.
no, no. If they're going to have two assignments for you all for law, and not only
Yes.
for law, you know, for other subjects also, you'll have another two more assignments to do. Not only for law, other subjects also, you all will have two assignments to do. Two individual assignments, each will carry 3,500 words. So that means, yeah. So that means you won't have the actual final exam, but you'll have an alternative exam, which is less questions than the actual final exam. If you are doing that assignment, two assignments, not only for law, you know, other subjects also, you'll have two assignments to do.
Never mind lah. We probably don't have time to do. Okay lah, proceed lah.
But your assignment questions, I've already prepared two questions here, two individual. But once I know they're going to have assignment, then only I will go through on that. Okay. So
Okay, Gua.
okay, don't worry much on that. Don't worry at this stage here because okay.
Teacher will be worried about that, no? Because we still have other assignments to do. We
Yeah,
still
I
haven't
do.
done. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. I do understand. I do understand, but it's not within my control. It is so I can't do anything there.
Yeah. Management
Because
fault. Yeah.
yeah, correct. So it's beyond uh, my control also. Okay, now what I'm going to do today, yeah, I'm going to do uh, lec- the last lecture one, lecture 14. Can you see lecture 14 in your Moodle? Lecture 14. That's what I'm going to do today, and lecture 13 I'll do it next week. Okay. Hello. I'm just going to follow that. Yeah. Okay. Are you all on your Moodle now? The slides on the Moodle. Hello.
Yes, sir. Which one? Which slide and which
Okay.
topic?
Okay. Go into lecture 14. Can you see law of thought, intentional thought, trespass to person? Nampak tak?
Yes.
That is what I'm going to do today. And then the lecture 13 I'm going to do next week. And you'll have, excluding today, you have 2 more classes, right? Betul kan?
Yes.
Okay, don't worry. Even if you don't have enough time, yeah, I'll have some extra classes for you, don't worry. Okay, I'll have extra classes, especially once your assignment has been given, yeah, then I will do some extra classes for your assignments. I'll give you a guide on that, don't worry anything on that, yeah. Okay, intentional thought. Can you see the word intentional thought? Can you see the word there, intentional thought?
Teacher, can you repeat again?
What's
On
that?
topic what?
Okay,
Your notes.
now, lecture 14. The heading is law of thought, intentional thought, trespass to person. Trespass to person. Nampak tak?
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Got it? Yeah, that's what we're going to do, yeah? Intentional thought, yeah? Okay, when talking about intentional thought, yeah? What you mean by intentional thought, yeah? Intentional thought is also an extension of law of thought, yeah? It comes under law of thought also, yeah? But here we are talking about intentional thought means, yeah? You are having an intention to go into another person's property without permission, yeah, and also trespass to person, trespass to land, trespass to person, and also interference with the goods of another person. You got it? So that means here, under this intentional thought, yeah, you have 3. Okay, one is trespass to person, 2 trespass to land, and 3 interference with the goods, goods, of another person. You got it? Hello? Okay, so here you got it? Okay, now I'm going to focus more on the first one today, yeah, trespass to person. Okay, before I go into trespass to person, yeah, okay, one key thing you need to know, yeah, it's not in your slides, just jot it down somewhere and keep, yeah, the general elements of trespass, the general elements of trespass. Okay, hello, whatever I'm giving now, you all, yeah, you all need to know this on the day of the exam. So whatever I'm saying now, whatever I'm giving extra, not in your slides here, this is what you need to know on the day of the exam. Yeah. So please jot it down somewhere. Please jot it down somewhere. Yeah. Okay. The general elements of trespass. What are the elements needed to establish trespass? One, a positive act. A positive act has opposed to an omission. A positive act positive act, ACT, yeah, has opposed to has opposed to an omission. Okay, what do you mean by this? Yeah, a positive act has opposed to an omission. That means, yeah, positive act means, yeah, you have an intention, you have a intention, or you want to put it in another manner, yeah, you have an intention, but a malice intention, malice, M-A-L-I-C-E, malice intention or ill intention, malice intention or ill intention, malice intention or ill intention, ill. So that means, yeah, you have some intention which is to harm another person. That means you have an intention to harm another person, or an intention to get into another person's land for some illegal purpose. And the goods here, you have an intention to misappropriate. You have an intention to misappropriate or misuse property belonging to another person. Property belonging to another person. Okay, that is the first one. What do you mean by a positive act as opposed to an omission? Omission means conduct. Omission means conduct. Yeah. Okay. Two, a direct act of the defendant. A direct act of the defendant. A direct act of the defendant to the plaintiff or his land or his goods. A direct act of the defendant to the plaintiff, comma, his land or his goods. So that means, yeah, the defendant is directly interfering into the life of another person, or into the land of another person, or the goods. When I say another person, that means I'm referring to the plaintiff land, or the plaintiff himself, or the plaintiff goods. That means, yeah, a direct act of the defendant on the plaintiff's land, or harming the plaintiff, or destroying, or misusing, or misappropriating property or the goods of the plaintiff. You got it? Any questions so far? Have you all taken down? Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so these are the two elements. Yeah? Okay, the third one is the thought of trespass. The thought of trespass is proven without the plaintiff having to prove that he has suffered any injury or loss. I repeat again, yeah. The third element is the thought of trespass is proven without the plaintiff having to prove that he or she has suffered any injury or loss. You got it? Okay, these are the three elements needed to establish intentional thought. These are the three elements needed to establish intentional thought. Intentional thought, yeah. Okay. Now, I'm going to focus on intentional thought, trespass to person, trespass to person. As what you could see in your slides here, as what you could see in your slides here, trespass to person. Okay, so under this here, you have assault. The first one is assault. Okay, assault. I'm sure in your normal wordings, you all have heard the word assault. Am I right? Assault is an act of the defendant which causes the plaintiff reasonable apprehension of the act which is doing. Okay, you see here. Now you add in your slides here. Please add in your slide here. Please add in your slide here. An assault may be defined as an intentional and direct act of the defendant which causes the plaintiff reasonable apprehension of the immediate infliction of force onto his person. You got it? That is the full definition of assault. If you all got it, I'll repeat again here. Please take down here. You need this, Assault may be defined as an intentional and direct act of the defendant which causes the plaintiff reasonable apprehension of the immediate infliction of force onto his person. Okay, now you see here. Did you all get it, the full thing? This is the definition given in the case of Collins versus Wilcock. This is the definition given in the case of Collins and Wilcock. This is the full definition of the word assault. Okay, assault here. Listen here. Assault not necessary. Continue here. Assault not necessary. There must be assault here. Not necessary. Assault not necessary. There must be a physical contact. Assault not necessary. There must be a physical contact. By you showing the word you want this without touching another person, it is still assault. It's still assault. By you putting your hand near him but no physical contact, it is still assault. Or you are saying, I'm going to pull my gun out from my pocket. That is also assault. Assault not necessary. There must be body contact. Assault here, when I'm talking about assault here, physical stress on the other person or putting a fear into another person. These all comprise of assault. Not necessary. There must be physical contact.
Teacher,
Sometimes the wording, yeah.
What you mean is
tell me,
mental contact also counted lah.
What's that?
Mental.
No, when you're talking about mental, yeah. So you're putting a mental stress. Okay, you are looking at that person, go near him and telling him, yeah, I'm going to kidnap your children, or I'm going to kill you one of these days. So you're putting a mental stress on the other person. That means, yeah, you have already put a fear on him already. What do you mean by mental stress? So you're putting a mental stress, yeah, on him. Oh, hey, see, when I tell him I'm going to kidnap your children, so that means you're putting a fear on him, mental stress on him, he'll get worried. Fear is there. You have created a fear on him. That all carries the word assault. You get it? Hello?
Yes, yes, yes.
Hello? Young? Are you clear,
Yes,
Young?
I'm clear, I'm clear.
Young Wenbin?
Yes, I'm clear, teacher.
Any question?
So far, no.
Okay. So that is what we mean by that, yeah? So going back, okay, now what are the elements? Now we look into, yeah, what are the elements? What are the elements? What are the elements needed for assault? Assault is established when four elements are fulfilled. So now we look into what are the elements needed to establish, what are the elements needed to establish assault. One, the mental state of the defendant. Can you see in your slide? Yeah. Can you see in your slide? The mental state of the defendant. The mental state of the defendant. Okay. What you mean by the mental state of the defendant? Yeah. The mental state of the defendant. Yeah. The defendant must have an intention to do his act. The mental state of the defendant. That means, yeah, the defendant must have an intention to do his act. So that means, yeah, here one of the first elements needed, to establish assault, yeah. There are four elements needed to establish assault. The first one is the mental state of the defendant. So that means here we are talking about plaintiff and the defendant. The victim is the plaintiff here, right? The victim is the plaintiff here. The victim is the plaintiff, because the plaintiff is the one who's doing the defendant, because it has caused some harm or fear to the plaintiff, right? So here, one of the elements needed to establish assault is the mental state of the defendant. So that means, yeah, the defendant has an intention to put fear on the plaintiff. It can be by showing his body conduct, or using words which is very negative, using words. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to chop off your hand. These are all words. Are you following? So that means, yeah, the first element is the mental condition of the defendant. So that means, yeah, the defendant had an ill intention. Ill intention means, yeah, a malice intention, an intention to cause some form of harm, not necessarily physical harm, could be mental harm to the plaintiff. That is the first element you need to establish for the assault. That's the first element. The second element need to establish is the effect on the plaintiff. The effect on the plaintiff. Okay, the effect on the plaintiff. There must be some effect to the plaintiff because of the intention of the defendant. Am I right? Because of the intention of the defendant, there must be some impact on the plaintiff. Okay, so here, what kind of impact are you talking about? What's the effect on the plaintiff? The plaintiff must feel reasonable apprehension that a force will be inflicted upon him. So he's worried that he might attack him anytime. So that means, here, there is already a fear within the plaintiff. Oh, what is the move of the defender now? What is he going to do now? So some kind of a fear already been effect on the plaintiff. That is another, that's a second element the plaintiff need to show, that the wordings of the defendant, or the words of the defendant, or the act, or the body language of the defendant has created some kind of a fear on the plaintiff, some kind of a fear on the plaintiff. That need to be established. That need to be established. That's the second element which the plaintiff need to show. Are you following? Hello?
Teacher, can you
Again,
repeat
okay?
again?
Ah,
The
okay.
second
Effect.
point, the
The
effect of
second.
the plaintiff,
Okay.
feel reasonable,
Okay.
and then what?
Okay. Okay. The effect on the plaintiff here. The effect on the plaintiff here. The plaintiff must feel reasonable apprehension. Apprehension means here a fear that a force will be inflicted upon him. The plaintiff must feel reasonable apprehension that a force, F-O-R-C-E, will be inflicted upon him. Reasonable apprehension is determined by the objective test. Would a reasonable man faced with the same situation, would a reasonable man faced with the same situation that the plaintiff was in, will he feel apprehension? So they're using a reasonable, let's say, example, what do you mean by this? Let's say the defendant is showing a knife at the plaintiff. So the moment the defendant showing a knife at the plaintiff, that means any reasonable person in plaintiff's situation will have fear or apprehension, am I right? That this guy might strike him or might chop off his head or leg or any part of the body, am I right? So if there's a fear has already been created, that's what they're telling. Would a reasonable man, okay, somebody, okay, now going back to you, let's say somebody is pointing a gun at you. Let's say somebody is pointing a gun at you. Would you have fear? Would you have fear or no fear? Hello, the person who raised the
Fear,
question.
I fear.
Of course, you will have fear, right? So that means, not only the plaintiff, any reasonable man would have fear if somebody is pointing a gun at him, am I right? This is what you call as objective test. Objective test means, any reasonable person in the plaintiff situation will have a fear if somebody is pointing a knife or a gun or whatever at the plaintiff. This is what they're talking about, a reasonable man. So that means they're using an objective test. If let's say when they're asking the objective test, let's say 99% of them are saying no, they would not have fear, then that means there's no effect on the plaintiff. Are you following? So if they can come to a conclusion to say that yes, they will have fear, then that is the second element which the plaintiff need to show proof. Dapat?
Yes. Dapat.
Okay, the third one, capability to carry out that threat. Capability to carry out the threat. So here, not so that means, the defendant, the third element the plaintiff need to show is the defendant is capable to carry out the threat. THREAT is capable of carrying out that particular threat. So he must show proof of that. Are you following? Okay. Before I go into the third one, the capability to carry out the threat, Can you see in your slide, yeah? Slide 4. Can you see your slide 4? Can words constitute an assault? Generally cannot, but there are exception. Okay. In the case of R stands for Regina, yeah, versus Maid and Belt, yeah. No words singing is an assault. R and Wilson, get out your knife was considered assault. In R versus Ireland, words which instill a reasonable fear of unlawful and immediate physical violence does amount to violence. So sometimes it depends on the situation, you know. Let's say somebody is telling you have not seen the gun, you know, or you have not seen the knife the defendant is having, but he's telling, I'm going to pull out the knife now. But yes, you have not seen the knife, but he's telling to you, I'm going to pull out the knife now. Would you have fear? Would any reasonable person have fear? Even though you have not seen the knife. Are you following?
Yes.
So can you see the Malaysian case here, Shalini? Can you see the Malaysian case, Shalini Shanmugam versus Mani Binti Anyam? Abusive words are used, followed by abusive physical harm. Assault is established. Sometimes abusive words can also be an assault. Okay. Now, okay. Now, so what I'm going to the third one here, capability to carry out the threat. So that means here the plaintiff must also establish that defendant not only putting fear, but he's capable of carrying out the threat. So here you put it this way, take down this here. This requirement, hello, the third one, capability to carry out the threat. This requirement is measured through. This requirement is measured through the eyes of the reasonable plaintiff. This requirement is measured through the eyes of the reasonable plaintiff. Again, they're using the objective test here. Would a reasonable man, who is in the plaintiff position, would a reasonable man who is in the plaintiff's position feel reasonable fear that there is a threat of immediate force upon himself? So they're using again a reasonable man test here. Okay, there you can use the case of Stephen versus Myers. Can you see it there? Stephen versus Myers. You know what happened in this case? Stephen and Myers. The defendant threatened to hit the plaintiff and he advanced with the clenched fist. So he showed his hand towards the plaintiff. So here they're saying it fulfilled the requirement of capability to carry out the threat. So you're showing your finger, fist at the face, near the face of the plaintiff. So the plaintiff knew he could continue even punching him. Are you following? That you can use that as a case, yeah? And the fourth element to establish assault is bodily movement. Bodily, bodily, bodily movement, movement, bodily movement. Okay, what do you mean by bodily movement? What do you mean by bodily movement? Even though assault involves no contact, as what I told you in the beginning, even though assault involves no contact, it is often said that some bodily movement is necessary. Some bodily movement is necessary. Okay, what do you mean by bodily movement? Bodily movement means a positive act. Bodily movement means a positive act in the circumstances in the circumstances indicating that the defendant will carry out his threat. I'll repeat again, yeah. The fourth element is bodily movement. What do you mean by bodily movement? Even though assault involves no contact, it is often said that some bodily movement is necessary. Bodily movement means a positive act in the circumstances indicating that the defendant will carry out his threat. So, bodily movement per se would not be sufficient, but the movement must be such that it corresponds with the probable infliction of unwanted force into the plaintiff. So that are the four elements. You can talk in one sentence also, them very briefly. Yeah, these are the four elements needed to establish assault. Okay, then you might ask a question. That's what just now I did ask you all. Yeah, Can words constitute assault? Yes, words also can constitute assault. Words, because sometimes, yeah, words like I'm going to kill you, I'm going to rape you, I'm going to kidnap your children. These are the words which also constitute an assault. Are you following? So not necessary you are showing your fingers or pulling out a gun or whatever can constitute assault, but words itself also can uh, cause assault. But then again, you see, sometimes, yeah, in the court of law, yeah, during a hearing, yeah, sometimes, yeah, even though we say, generally speaking, words can words can constitute what do you mean that words can constitute assault. I told you, right, words can constitute assault, but sometimes, yeah, what are the factors the court will take into consideration in deciding whether words can constitute assault? Yeah, even though, as what I told you, words can constitute assault, but sometimes, yeah, certain situation it cannot. Let's say, example, I give a situation. Yeah, let's say the plaintiff. The plaintiff is 6 feet high and well built. He's a bodybuilder, and the defendant is 4 feet in height, and a very thin man with almost like a skeleton, and he's telling, I'm going to give you a punch now. I'm going to give you and he's showing this, I'm going to give you a punch now, looking at the plaintiff. Okay, can this consider assault here? What do you think?
No.
Of course, no, isn't there? Because that guy is physically built, he's physically built with the body, and he's a 6-footer, the plaintiff. And the defendant is a thin guy, almost like skeleton, and he's showing, I'm going to punch you now. Can that consider? Sometimes, yeah, the circumstances or the situation is also taken into consideration. Sometimes the circumstances or the situation and the physical nature of the plaintiff and defendant also taken into consideration in deciding whether yes or no. Okay, as long as you know this, here for assault is more than enough. In fact, I've gone a bit detailed, but you need only very, very briefly. Any question? Any question, please? Okay, the next one I'm going to go. Yeah. Okay, the next one I'm going to go is, okay, the second one I'm going to go is into your battery. When I'm talking about battery, I'm not talking about the battery you use for your mobile phone or for your torchlight or whatever. I'm not talking about that battery. Yeah, Can you see here? Battery. Can you see the word there? Battery. Okay. Battery means, yeah. Okay. Now you take down your battery, yeah. Battery. Battery may be defined. Battery may be defined as the intentional and direct. Battery may be defined as the intentional and direct application of force to another person without that person's consent. Without that person's consent. That means without that person's consent means without the consent of the plaintiff. That this touching need not necessarily involve violence. This touching need not necessarily involve violence. So that means, yeah, battery means, yeah, there is already a body contact. There's already a body contact. Battery. So that means, yeah, it could be just scratches on you, just some minor scratches on you. Let's say the defendant is using his fingernail and pulling it on you. As that is what we mean by battery. Battery means already there is a body contact. Assault normally there's no body contact. Assault normally there's no body contact, but battery there is a body contact. So here battery, this touching need not necessarily involve violence. Not necessarily violence. Violence means, you know, a severe GBH, grievous bodily harm. So here we are not talking about severe injury, a very, very minor, some scratch is related to battery. The thought of battery, the thought, TORT, yeah, of battery protects an individual from any interference into or onto his person. Okay, now we look into, yeah, what are the elements? What are the elements needed to establish battery? What are the elements needed to establish battery? What are the elements? Okay, again here you need 4 elements. Again, similar to assault, here also you need 4 elements. The first one is the mental state of the defendant. That's what you could see also in your assault also, yeah. That element is there also for assault, right? The mental state of the defendant. The mental state of the defendant. Okay, what do you mean by the mental state of the defendant? The defendant must have applied. The defendant must have applied the force with intention. The defendant must have applied the force with intention. With intention. Although the general rule is, that the intention relates to the direct act of the defendant. The direct act of the defendant. The direct act of the defendant. So here, that means here, what I'm trying to say here is, yeah, for battery to take place, one of the elements is the mental state of the defendant. So here, the mental state of the defendant is he's going to have a body contact with the plaintiff. There's going to be a body contact. But the degree of the body contact, that is not the question here. The degree of how, what's the degree? Is it chopping off his hand or whatever? But here, there must be a minimum body contact. It could be just slight scratches that itself suffice battery. So if there is a deep, let's say, chopping off his hand, that is not battery. That is beyond that. That is what in law we call it as grievous bodily harm. Grievous bodily harm. That means, yeah, serious injury. Serious injuries here, you wouldn't say it's battery. Battery means, yeah, slight scratches. That is what you mean by battery. If serious injuries, yeah, then it will come under criminal law. That comes under criminal law. Here we are talking about uh, intentional thought, where under law of thought you are causing some kind of a fear or some slight uh, injury to the, I wouldn't say injury, slight scratches to the plaintiff. Let's say somebody is coming into you and causing you some minor scratches, and that comes under law of thought. Yeah. So here the mental state of the defendant. Here the mental state of the defendant is that he has an intention to cause some kind of a body contact with the plaintiff. So it could be very minor. It could be very minor here. Okay, got it? Hello? Okay. Now, the second defendant's act was under his control. The second element which the plaintiff must show proof is the defendant act was under his control. The defendant act must be done voluntarily. The defendant act must be done voluntarily. So that means, yeah, the defendant, he himself, willingly and voluntarily causing some kind of a body contact or minor scratches to the plaintiff. Okay, that's one case. I don't know whether this case in your slide, I'm not sure whether I've given this case in your slide. Yeah, the name of the case, yeah, Gibson, Gibbons, Gibbons versus Pepper, Pepper. Okay, this case, yeah, is relating to battery, but it touches on the second element. The defendant's act was under his control. What happened here? The defendant was riding a horse. In this, yeah, the defendant, who the defendant here, Pepper Wright, was riding a horse. When someone hit the horse, from behind, causing the horse to bolt. So that means that when somebody is hitting the horse from the back, of course the horse will get angry, right? Okay, the horse collided with the plaintiff. So that means that somebody hit the horse, and the horse jolted, jumped, and it went and collided with the plaintiff. And in an action against the defendant, the court found that the defendant not liable, as the incident of the horse bolting and colliding with the plaintiff was outside his control. So here the plaintiff brought an action against the defendant, the person who was riding that horse. And when this case went to court, the judge said no, because a third party hit that horse, and the horse went aggressive, and it went and knocked the plaintiff. So that was beyond the control of the defendant, and here the defendant was not the cause of that accident also. Am I right? So here what this element is telling is that, yeah, the defendant act was under his control. That means, yeah, he is the one who caused that particular harm to the plaintiff. That is very important. Yeah. The third element to establish battery. The third element. This all, yeah, the first element, second element, third element. You can put it in one line, but I'm trying to give you some explanation in some cases. Yeah. The third element is contact. 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 There will be no battery. There will be no battery if there is no contact or application of force on the plaintiff's body or clothing. So to establish battery, there must be physical contact with the plaintiff and the defendant. So it's clearly stating that there will be no battery if there is no contact or application of force on the plaintiff's body or clothing. The word force is equivalent to unwanted. No violence is necessary. No violence, just minimum scratches. If it's violent, then it is grievous bodily harm, as what I told you, right? There must be body contact. If there's no body contact, then there is no battery. Can you see? Okay, in your slide 6, if I'm not mistaken, slide 6, right? Can you see the case there? Can you see one case there? Cole versus Turner. Can you see?
Yes.
Least touching of another in anger is battery. You are touching another person in angry. Let's see, you're pulling his shirt, and that is already battery. Okay, so that means you are touching with some intention. You are just touching him, it's not battery. But if you are touching with an ill intention to do some harm to him, then it is battery. Then it's battery. Otherwise, it is not battery. Are you following? Okay, that is the third element to establish battery. And the fourth element, without the plaintiff's consent, without the plaintiff's consent. So that means you are touching the plaintiff. That means the defendant is touching the plaintiff without the plaintiff's consent. Okay, what do you mean by this? Without the plaintiff's consent. One cannot touch another person without his consent or without lawful justification. Without lawful justification. One cannot touch another person without his consent or without lawful justification, unless you could justify. Okay, what do you mean by without justification? Yeah. What do you mean by that? Without justification? What do you mean by without justification? So that means what we are trying to say here, there must be a body contact. There must be a body contact. But sometimes without justification. Okay, like let's say you are playing football. Or you're playing rugby. So there is a body contact between the players. Am I right? That is not battery, because here that is part and parcel of the football match. You have already consent ready. You have already given consent that sometime when you play football, sometime you will have a physical contact. That is not battery there. That is part and parcel of a football match or rugby match or whatever. A consent has been given, approval has been given. Sometimes when you're playing games, of course, there'll be a body contact. Sometimes that could be also a minor injury or scratches. And that is not battery, because there you don't need, because the participants in that particular game already granted, because sometimes they play matches, games or whatever, physical contact, it could cause some kind of a minor scratches or whatever, unless and until in a football match where you are breaking another person's, then it could be not a battery there, but it could be a grievous bodily harm. That could be a grievous bodily harm there. Not necessary it has to be a battery here. So games, you cannot say, even though there's a body contact here, battery, because that consent already been granted. That you need. Without the consent means, so you are touching another person or causing some minor scratches on him without his consent. If it's a football match, then you can justify that's part of the match. Am I right? Okay, that's one case here. You can take down, give a simple example here. Tiong picked Tiong, Tiong. I'm not sure whether you have that case in a slide. Yeah, Tiong. Yeah, it's in there. Can you see Tiong Pik Kiong? I think slide 8. I think this case. Tiong Pik Kiong versus Wong Siu Giu. Can you see? Hello. Slide 8. Can you see the case? Slide 8.
Yes.
Hello. Hello, dengar tak?
Yes,
Hello,
can
can you
see.
hear me?
Can.
Can see the case here. Tiong Pik Kiong versus that case. The defendant scratches the piece face out of jealousy and hiring her due to the friendship with her friendship. And then here, yes, because the intention is. But the first one, can you see Nash and Shin? The plaintiff went to a hairdressing salon and got applied a tone rinse without her approval on her. Nash got some skin complication due to reaction. Her battery was established since no consent by the plaintiff. Sometimes it depends on a case-to-case situation. Normally this goes on a case-to-case situation. Yeah. Are you following? So this is what you mean by so we have done assault, battery, and the third one which we are going to do is false imprisonment. Can you see? If I'm mistaken, it is in your slide 9 or 10. Yes, slide 9. Yeah, correct. False imprisonment. Okay, now let me see who's that here. Lau Chen Yang. Lau Chen Yang. Lau, are you on the line? Lau
Yes,
Chen.
yes, what?
Okay, Lau, can you tell me now? Yeah, the differences between assault and battery? Tell me one difference between
no need to touch. Battery must have body contact.
Okay, all right. Okay, Cassandra, what about you, Cassandra? Tell me that one difference between assault and battery. Cassandra,
Assault is assault is there's bodily contact and battery.
Nobody contact, is it?
There must be body.
Or the other way around?
The other way around. The other way around.
Okay, now let me briefly give you the differences. Yeah, hello, all of you, please take down this. Yeah, okay, the first difference, assault. Yeah, okay, assault. The issue of consent does not arise. For battery, the defender is done without the plaintiff's consent. Am I right? 2. For assault, yeah, the plaintiff experiences real apprehension of an immediate infliction of force upon his person. Assault. Whereas for battery, there is physical contact or direct transmission of force without the defendant and the plaintiff. Third, for assault, the thought protects one from threat of any physical violence as well as to maintain a person's mental well-being. Whereas in battery, the thought protects one from physical contact, violent or otherwise, as long as it is an unnecessary and unauthorized act. That is the main differences, yeah. But whatever differences, as long as you could see what are the differences, yeah, it's more than enough. But the main difference is battery, there's a body contact, and assault, there's no body contact. Am I right? So here, there is some kind of a physical injury to a battery, assault, no. Am I right? Wordings cannot. Wordings for battery, do you need wording for battery? No, only assault you need. Am I right? For battery, there must be a physical contact. These are the general things which you need to know. Yeah. Okay. The The third one is, first one is assault, second one is battery, and the third one is false imprisonment. False imprisonment. I think it's already in your slide. Yeah, false imprisonment. False imprisonment. Okay, what do you mean by false imprisonment? What do you mean by that? Hello, can anyone give me in one sentence what is false imprisonment? It's already in your slide, am I right? False imprisonment here is defined as the restriction of a person's freedom of movement. False imprisonment is defined as the restriction of a person's freedom of movement. Freedom of movement. Freedom of movement. The person so restrained is imprisoned so long as he cannot move to another place in accordance with his wishes. So, false imprisonment here, you are locking someone inside a room. You are locking someone inside a room and taking away the key. That is false imprisonment. So that means false imprisonment, that means you have restricted the plaintiff's movement freely. He cannot move from one place to another because you have already prisoned him or locked him into a room or whatever. Okay, false imprisonment, is the infliction of body restraint which causes the confinement of a plaintiff. But here, false imprisonment, not necessary there must be a physical contact, not necessary there must be assault, not necessary there must be a battery, not necessary. You are just, let's say a person inside the room and you are just going and locking the door and just throwing away the key. So here you have restricted the plaintiff's movement. So false imprisonment can be without assault or can be without battery, but you are restraining a person's movement. That is what you mean by false imprisonment. Okay, now what are the elements? What are the elements needed? Okay, what are the elements needed here? For false imprisonment, you only need three elements. The first one is the mental state of the defendant. It applies for all here. The mental state of the defendant. Similar to assault, battery also it has, isn't that? Mental. Okay, what do you mean by this? Can anyone tell me in one sentence what do you mean by mental state of the defendant? That means the defendant must have committed the restraint intentionally. The defendant must intend to do an act which directly results in the confinement of the plaintiff. Confinement means locking him into one place. Okay, there's a case there, right? Can you see? There's a case there. Lee Ling Sun. P was arrested by police at the entrance of a court on charge of driving a lorry with inefficient brakes. P said that the necklace imprisonment can occur. Police arrested you and putting you into local imprisonment. Is it a false imprisonment? Hello? Hello?
Sir, you are lagging just now. Can you repeat?
Okay, what I'm trying to say here, let's say a police officer has arrested you and he's locking you and putting you into the lockup. Okay, that means he's restricting your movement. You cannot see anyone, am I right? Is it a false imprisonment? Is it a false imprisonment here? Yes or no?
Yes.
When a policeman is arresting you, and putting you into a lockup, is it a false imprisonment? No, because here the policeman is executing his duty. Is legally arresting you with a arrest warrant or whatever, because you have committed a crime and he's arresting you and putting you in lockup before you are taken to the court to be charged for whatever offense which you have committed. And so they are doing it legally, legally. So it's not a false imprisonment. False imprisonment take place when they are not authorized to put you into lockup. And then that is false imprisonment. Let's say somebody is putting you into a room, pushing you into a room and locking you without any valid reason. And that is what they call as false imprisonment. When police officers, they do that, they are executing their duty. Okay, we'll just take a 5 minutes break. Just take a 5 minutes break. Yeah. Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Class rep, are you on the line? I'll just take a 5 minutes
Yes.
break.
Okay.